Welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chang, your host. The mission of Awake to Oneness Radio is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. Science is now teaching us that all life is interconnected and interdependent. And ancient wisdom and spirituality has been teaching us the truth of oneness for eons. So now science is catching up. And so basically what you do to another person, you're literally doing to an aspect of yourself. And when mankind awakens to the universal truth of oneness, there will be peace on earth. Today's show topic is Spirit Teaches with Sara Ruble. I had the honor of meeting Sara in person in Phoenix a few weeks ago, actually in April, at the first Helping Parents Heal conference. Thank you, Sara, for being my guest on Awake to Oneness Radio.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm thrilled to be here with you. I love meeting you.
Thank you. Oh, I loved meeting you. I sat through your work breakout session, they call them, and I just said, oh, I want her. I love to have her as a guest on the show. So please, I know a little bit of your story. Please share with our listeners your journey and, your story and how you came to be doing the wonderful work that you're doing today.
Well, thank you. My story, we all have a unique story, and that really is why we're all doing this work. And my story started in 1994 when my only child, Scott, left this earth in a sudden fashion in a way that I could never have anticipated. He was 19 years old, in college, and wanted to work in a national park in the summer in between his freshman and sophomore years of college. We live in Ohio, and Scott had gotten an internship in Colorado to work at a national park. He was very much into the environment, recycling, all that really important nature tied into. So his dad and I were a little reluctant. We knew Scott had a seizure disorder that was very well taken care of, that came out of nowhere when he was 15.
Okay.
But we trusted.
Yes.
And we wanted him to be able to expand and fly and be all he could be, because that was the kind of kid he was.
Yes.
So we let him go. We got him out there safely. He had his car for the summer. And then we would just connect with him on the phone. 1994, no cell phone.
No cell phones, right, exactly.
Unbelievable, I know it is.
Yes.
And yet he had one phone number that he left with us and said he'd call us on Sunday nights. So we just trusted that. So when he got to Colorado, he was there, got there on a Sunday, just trusted he was being trained by the adults in the park, that other college students would be coming for the summer. That was going to be the fun part. Yes. And yet he was the first one to get there. So the first week he was there alone in a 10-room dorm.
Okay.
He was not feeling well, which I did not know because we weren't having constant contact. And on Thursday he called me and said, "I'm not feeling well, Mom. I don't know what it is. I've been sick ever since I got here." I really did not know what to do. Right. What I did find out, though, as I tried not to scare him with my own fear, was that there in the park, the adults that were there had given him the name of a doctor and set up a doctor's appointment for the next day. So Scott went to the doctor on Friday morning. So he'd only been there for 5 days. The doctor said he had strep throat, which I kind of thought from his symptoms. But he'd gotten medication, he was eating. I could tell he was feeling better and relieved as well. So then I was relieved.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So that was Friday. Then,
excuse me, sorry. You're saying, talk about Scott's, and I have a little dry throat just because I went camping in the rain a few weeks ago, but.
That's not good either.
Yes.
But on Sunday night, Scott did not call his dad or I. We were divorced. And we just trusted that he was busy. Other kids were coming to the park. We just trusted it. Unfortunately, though, on Monday morning, we got phone calls that Scott had died in his room. And it looked from the pathologist report like he had died Friday night in his sleep. And no one checked on Scott the whole weekend. None of the adults that knew he was going to the doctor. I'd even talked to one of the the workers in the park and said, I want you to know he's my only child. You know, just please keep an eye on him. And they all went busy. They went in town and they went camping and they did what they do on the weekends. And we were left with that. And so that was the beginning of my journey. And I couldn't have ever known what that first day would be like and what was yet to follow, which has been incredible, I have to admit. It's just been so much harder and so much more beautiful than I can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
So we flew out to Colorado because we needed to be there. We never saw Scott again. They told us not to see him. We trusted the doctors, the pathologist. And so we went to talk to them and really felt so badly for them. We felt that they would have done anything they could have to have saved Scott. And since he died in his sleep on Friday, no one really could have saved him. It was the strep throat, seizure disorder, maybe, elevation and dehydration. All of that came together, and it was just the end. So when we came home and we had a funeral, calling hours, just like everyone does, and it was all that it needed to be for us and for Scott and to honor him. And the very next morning I woke up and I just felt a need to write a letter to our local paper and to say, I want to thank the community. And Scott had been senior class president of his class the year before. Oh, thank you for coming and taking care of us and sharing stories so we could laugh and remember. There was something really driving me to do that. And so I got out of bed with my tears and said to my husband, I'm going to go just write this right now. Mm-hmm. And I found some paper. It was Scott's notebook paper from high school, still in the cupboard. And I pulled out 2 pieces of paper. And one of the pages that came out was a poem in the notebook paper package, still with a cellophane wrapped around it. And it was a poem titled, Our Children Are Like Kites. And it went on to say that we with our children as kites, we let them out a little bit at a time, which we do, and we pull them back in, and they get stuck in the gutter, and we lift them out gently, and we get them on their way, and we let them fly again. And towards the end of the poem, it was a pretty simple poem written by Irma Bombeck, I've since learned, was that the words were saying, I am now free and alone, meant to soar as I'm meant to soar. Yes. And that word soar was so moving because it was like, I thought he had died, right? But he's telling me in this poem, I'm soaring. And the other key component to this was there was a drawing at the bottom of this, a handmade drawing at the bottom of this poem in the notebook paper package. And it was of 3 people holding kites, and in each kite was a letter, and it spelled May. And Scott died May 20th. So it was like, this was for me. And I have to tell you, Carolyn, in 1994, we did not know about signs. No one talked about it. It was not openly shared. But I knew it was a message from Scott, and I was immediately transformed in that moment. Wow. And that was the beginning. And I then continued to get signs. I shared them openly with friends, not knowing how they would react. But there was something so exciting about it. And I think I shared it with such an excitement that they didn't feel like they could dampen my spirits. And then it became more and more real of hearing Scott.
Yes.
And so my spiritual journey started immediately, which I couldn't have ever known what a spiritual journey was. And it has then progressed, and we now just passed 24 years with Scott because he's very much present in everything I do.
Yes, so true. Wow, that's amazing. Yes, that is so that is so touching, the way our children, because we know they are not gone, they are still very much with us, and how they give us and send us those messages. And I think one of the most important things is, like, a grieving parent may not have even picked up on that poem. They may have seen it, but think, kind of. So I think it's so important for not just parents, but anyone who is really missing the physical presence of a loved one to understand that they are not gone, and they are trying their hardest to get messages like that to us. So when we see messages like that, not to just think, oh, that's just a coincidence, or that's just my imagination. No, that is our loved ones trying to let us know that they're soaring, like Scott was telling you, and they're fine. Yes.
It was so remarkable. And
Yes.
I'm like you said, I could have just set that aside and go, I don't know what this is. I'm going to write my letter that morning.
Right.
But it was so certain in my mind that somehow he was communicating with me, not even knowing that was possible.
Yes.
And now I watch what happens every day now for so many new parents whose children have left, transitioned, and it's just remarkable.
Yes.
So
yes, go ahead. I was going to say, yes.
I had signs throughout the next few years that just kept me going. And I was working with a counselor. That was the only key component that I had that was bringing me any source of perspective and grief, what to do with all this grief. No Facebook then, nothing like that, even on the internet.
Right.
So I felt very much on my own, except my counselor was extraordinary and very helpful. And I just kept going for years. Yes. Never thought I'd be in counseling. And then I started a support group as well. And I felt Scott was then very present with me, helping me, guiding me, bringing out key. I'd open up a book and I would know that that was the statement I was supposed to share with my parents in the parents group, that kind of thing.
Yes.
So it wasn't until actually 6 years after Scott died, and I know that's longer, and Spirit is moving faster now. So I see that all the time, which I'm thrilled for every parent that's, getting more than I was able to get. But I have survived, and that is a key component to that. It's not I'm going around, I'm not telling everybody I'm a survivor, but I did survive with what little or what big things could come that showed me that I wasn't alone.
Yes. Yes.
So 6 years later, I heard the words that I never really heard anything like this before, which just kind of went through my mind that said, build a children's memorial. Well, this time I did ignore it because I did not know what that was. It did not sound like Scott. It was literally just a statement that said, build the children's memorial. And it was like, well, I'm not doing that. I don't know how to do that. I'd have to fundraise. I've never done that. So I ignored it. But 3 weeks later, because they are persistent, I was sitting at a red light, my mind kind of blank, and I heard the words exactly the same way. No emotion, just build the children's memorial. And at that moment, it was like, oh my gosh, that must be Scott. It's got to be.
Yes.
And so I raced home and so excited because I always thought if I heard Scott, it would sound like exactly like his voice, where he'd go in, hi, Mom, it's Scott. But it wasn't like that. It was a statement, but so connected to him and for me. And I asked my husband at that point when I went home, do you think I'm crazy that I think I heard Scott tell me to build a children's memorial? And I say this all the time, but it's like he couldn't really tell me I was crazy, right? Because that would not have been the right answer. He knows that. And so I gathered a group of my support group, and we raised $50,000 in 7 months. And we built the Angel of Hope here in Stowe, Ohio. Just so extraordinary. And every step of the way, I was getting signs from Scott. Sometimes it was brownies. I mean, we love chocolate. And when a neurologist offered me a brownie, sounds kind of weird, it's like I knew Scott was in the house, in the hospital, let's say. And so I wrote down the signs, and I just was buoyed and just lifted by his presence because I knew that's what he wanted me to do. Wow. So that's kind of how I really got to know a deeper part of the journey and who I was in this and where Scott was too. Yes. It wasn't always enough to fill my heart. Is there ever enough, right? Yeah. But it was truly exceptional in with my story, and helped me so much.
Yes, it's so true. That's so true. Like you said, when you understand that our loved ones are still with us, and we tap into that connection, it does take us on a path that our soul plan. It puts us on our soul intention while we came here. And the same thing happened 6 months after my son Kyle transitioned. I was guided to start this radio show, and also found a foundation in his memory, which is the Kyle Foundation. But Kyle stands for Keep Your Light Expanding. And Kyle, I didn't know what to name Kyle when I was about 8 months pregnant with him. I knew he was a boy. I didn't know what to name him. And the name Kyle came, I don't actually remember the dream, but it came to me in a dream. And I believe he told me to name him Kyle because I would use the words, the acronym KYLE later on in life. So I truly believe that.
Yes, that is amazing. That is amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, we can never really know. And now, you know, when I look back, and you just talked about soul planning, which is, of course, one of my main areas of conversation with so many bereaved parents, is that we can't always see it when we're new in our grief, and we're just trying to get through each day and trying to understand what's going on and what do the signs mean, and really bring meaning to all of that.
Yes.
But the soul planning for me, now when I look back on 20 years or 10 years or 5 years, I can really see the path that is being led, that I'm being led on, that I never could have imagined when that first year or second year, even with Scott, you know, leaving. Right. It's been exceptional. It's been so heartwarming. And it was just, I just knew that I was meant to be doing more than I had ever done before.
Yes.
And so I trust it. I trust it 100%. Where I'm being taken, sometimes very, very demanding, sometimes not at all easy, and I'm sometimes just totally confused. But in the end, it starts to show itself, and then I feel comforted by the path that I know I chose to be on with Scott Spirit.
So true, so true. Like you said in the beginning, each of us, we have our own unique journey. And I say this, it's not just parents, it's anyone, it's everyone, because everyone is going to experience that type of loss in their life, whether it is a child, a parent, a best friend, a husband, a lover, it doesn't, we experience that as we go through life. We're on that journey. And when we experience those transitions, I always use the word transition because I know they're not gone. I know there's eternal life. On my journey, it was unique where I was actually blessed to I had two and a half extra years with Kyle. And during that time, I was reading books like Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Gift. Matter of fact, Your Soul's Plan, I was reading the last month of Kyle's life while he was here on Earth because he was in ICU on life support, and I was in that ICU room reading Your Soul's Plan and contacted Robert Schwartz, the author, while Kyle was still in the physical, but he was on life support and didn't know what was going to happen because 2.5 years earlier, when he was on life support, he pulled himself off. That's why I said I was blessed with 2.5 more years with him. I wasn't really in any shape for him to go in 2011 because I tried to commit suicide while he was on life support. And then I survived the suicide, and I whispered in his ear, Kyle, get better so we could both go home. And he did. He took himself off life support. So I lived through such a miracle, and was so blessed with that miracle. I told God I will never, ever, ever stop thanking him. So when it came around again, where he was on life support in 2014, I didn't forget my promise to God that I know everything that's happening is a soul plan between Kyle and I, and that the soul never dies. If he decides to transition this time, he's not going anywhere. His physical body is just a vehicle. And we all will leave our physical body at one time, but it's not who we are. And so I was blessed, and I was reading Your Soul. So please, I would love for you to share about Your Soul's Plan and the work you're doing with Your Soul's Planning with our listeners.
Okay. Well, I find it extraordinary that you're reading that book before Kyle left, before he transitioned. The knowing that you had just to be in that place, I think that's, I'm just so happy not happy for you. A relief it had to be to know more than you could have known before that book came out. So for me, I discovered Your Soul's Plan as well in 2007 when it first came out. Robert Schwartz lived an hour from me. I tracked him down. I went to book signings that he was doing, small book signings, because honestly, there weren't that many people that were aware of this. He was really on the forefront of an incredible gift to all of us who are trying to understand life and death and beyond.
Yes.
Transitioning all. So, Robert and I became friends, and he was just such an inspiration to me, his path, himself, and what he was bringing forth for all of us to try and understand as we grow into greater understanding of who we are.
Yes.
So for me, in 2007, so now that's been 11 years, I have been utilizing that book in so many ways. And I asked my husband to read it at one point, and he just could not understand. It just did not resonate with him.
Yes.
I had to let that be. And he's Scott's stepdad anyway, but still, for some reason that book just sucked me in. I'm sure you too. Yes. And it resonated so totally with me. And there was even the death of an only child in that book as well. That was very powerful for me.
Yes.
And so what happened on this path is that Scott started bringing me more and more information and concentrating more on the soul path, the soul plan, the fact that we're spiritual beings having human experiences, and really taking me in a place to make that more of what I'm going to be teaching and writing about. And I have a blog that I started with Scott. Well, let's say Scott started the blog with me because I wasn't going to write a blog. It was then determined I would write a blog because that was in my plan. Yes. And I got to see the path that was taken to get me to that blog of Death Teaches. And throughout that blog, we start with my story with Scott and just telling about the experiences and the signs and how I was shown my path and how I was going to somehow get through this. And there was always someone there maybe to give me an insight or a quote or something that just kind of lifted me. Yes. So as we continued writing that blog, Death Teaches, it was, and it was always designed by Spirit anyway, it was for Scott then to step into that, and I would write the first part of the blog, then the second part would be Scott that we put in italics, and he would bring explanation and meaning and depth to what the experiences that I had had in all of that. So I didn't even know where this blog was going to go. I didn't know where it was headed, but clearly he did. And he's Spirit was guiding it completely. And so by the time we were finished with that blog, which we ended at the end of last year with like about 80 blogs, it had gotten to the point where Scott was speaking more and more, bringing us more information, to start looking ourselves more as spirit in ways than I'd ever learned earlier. But we wanted to get this out to the newly bereaved in any case. It doesn't make any difference, like you're saying, Carolyn. Right. If it's your child, there's everyone in your life that, there's the chance that you don't know who's going to be leaving at any point in time or transitioning. Yes. So what happened with the Death Teaches blog is we've now made it into a book. Yes. I want to kind of share that. Yes. Through my website. Yes. Which is spiritteaches.org. So we finished that book. We finished the book. We finished the blog. And then I thought, okay, I didn't know what was coming next. And the next part was then Spirit Teaches, which is now, I've channeled Scott for quite some time. I know a lot of parents are hearing their children, which is so extraordinary. Yes. And he has been my teacher, and now and my guide, and, given me all the direction really that I feel like I've had since Scott transitioned. Right. But the Spirit Teaches comes from a place of Spirit really writing what they feel the readers need in ways that I never could. So as I'm writing these blogs, and it was with Death Teaches too, I really would sit down at the computer and I never knew what was coming out. I was literally, they taught me to let them use my fingers on the computer. We would write, I'd be going, oh my gosh, I didn't know that as I'm writing it, because it was like, oh, I love that part. Yes. And it was so exciting and yet so deep and so meaningful. And what I loved about the blog, and anybody that goes to our website can see both blogs are on there now, Death Teaches and Spirit Teaches, is that every question that came, we respond to. And it's kind of teaching even beyond what we had written in that blog. And I love that process too. Yes. Because Spirit wants us to understand this. It is coming out so much more fully. Robert Schwartz opened the door to all of this and
Yes.
brought us the greatest gift. I hope he appreciates that. I let him know periodically.
Yes.
And I do use his name a lot, just like you, Carolyn.
Yes. He
And
was, I didn't know if you know, he was my first guest. He's my very number one first guest. And I've had him on as a second time just about 6 months ago. So he's been my guest twice, but he was number one. He was my first guest. And I didn't meet him in person before I was inspired to do this show. Again, it was Kyle and Spirit inspiring me. Got up in the middle of the night 6 months after Kyle's transition. And Kyle has told me through a reading with Suzanne Giesman, Kyle says he's my co-host. So you channel Scott, but Kyle is my co-host when I do the show. He's always with me, and he's giving me messages. And as I do the show, he's right here with me. So he's my co-host. And but yes, Robert Schwartz is amazing. I had the wonderful opportunity of, like I said, when Kyle was still in his physical body on life support, I Googled Your Soul's Plan. I didn't know there was a book named. I just Googled Your Soul's Plan because I knew somewhere in my heart that this was a soul plan. And I wanted to know more about Soul Plan. So I just Googled Your Soul Plan. And of course, Robert in the book came up, and I got the book right away. And I had both of them in the ICU room. And I emailed Robert, and he got right back to me. So I'm emailing back and forth to Robert while I'm in the ICU room with Kyle. So it was definitely wonderful.
So
yes.
It's so powerful. It just shows how much is not really in our hands.
Yes.
You know, and we feel so strongly that we have free will in so many ways. And yet when you're on this journey and you begin to trust it and just see what comes that you never could have imagined, that you couldn't have thought of, that I couldn't have thought of. And it just creates a knowing that we aren't ever really alone on this, even though on those days when we have felt so despondent and so alone. Yes. And it's like, please just bring me a sign. We're then taught we are there always. But there has to be those in-between times where you have to do some of that individual work yourself. Mm-hmm. You can't sit down and read and we can't really be dependent on them.
Right.
To a point, but then they shift us at some point and say, you know, you need to learn this. You need to experience this. Yes. And as I've learned, and you have too, and probably anyone that's listening to us today, you find that the experiences in life are what teach us how to go forward and to take care of ourselves in ways. If you're getting sick because you're grieving and you haven't taken care of yourself, some point in time, you're going to look at that and go, I have to start exercising. I have to start eating better. I have to start taking care of myself. That experience taught us that.
Yes.
And so when we go from experience to experience, and then in time we can look back on them, or even presently when you're going through it, is to say, this is another piece to my journey. Yes. I always use these words that I know Spirit gave me. Trust the journey. And it sounds like just, well, trust the journey. We've heard that before. But I'm saying, no, really, truly, trust this journey. It is taking you places you'll never know you could go. It's taking you places you didn't want to go. But what did you learn from that? Mm-hmm. Because pain is a teacher. It is a huge teacher. And we try and understand that, but we can't live in pain typically for a real long time and just stay stationary in that. Something's going to trigger, which I now know is Spirit, is going to trigger movement in us and take us somewhere else. And so maybe we finally go and say, okay, I'll start exercising. I started jazzercising. But now there's so much. You can have your own personal trainer. But maybe that person becomes a dear friend and starts to understand your journey in a way that you couldn't have. And through those conversations, you are growing again through that experience. So I know this whole lifetime with everything that happens to our loved ones is meant to be experiential. Yes.
It's so true. And it's so true what you say. See, we as in our human consciousness, we think so linear. But in truth, free will and soul planning go hand in hand. It's not this or that. It's this and that. We do, from our spiritual, our higher self, which is still in the spirit realm, but we're still connected. Our human body is just like an avatar. It's just like a car. It's just a vehicle. But our human consciousness doesn't remember our soul plan, but our higher self never forgets it. And our higher self we're always connected to it. So our higher self is always guiding us. It's like, okay, this was the soul plan. Get on track, And we plan these challenges, what we call, from the human perspective, we think, oh my God, that's so tragic, that's so horrible. We planned it to help us get back on the path of why we're here. Because we know from the spiritual perspective, it's not what it seems. It's just because this life is just a mirror reflection of who we are, and we chose it. There's nothing being done to us. We planned it all. We're doing it to ourselves, and we planned these challenges. And I know people from the human perspective will say, why would I plan that? You did. Okay, you did. You planned it. And when you own it, there's a sense of freedom and power in owning your own experience. Nobody did anything to me. Everything I'm doing to myself, and I own it. And that gives you the opportunity. If you don't like the direction it's going, you have the power to change it. Only you. And in every now moment, because all there is the now. In every now moment, we have that opportunity to follow our heart and to follow love, our fear. In every now moment. And our point of power is in the now. So it doesn't matter what happened a moment ago. It doesn't matter what's going to happen in the next. It's this now moment where your power lies, where you can choose love or fear. And when you understand that, it's a sense of, for me, joy. And just knowing that, this isn't all there is. There's so much more, and we're going to live many more lives, and we've lived many, if we think of it, and we're living them now, in the here and now. That's because it's not past or future, it's all now.
Well, I love having this conversation with you. You know so much. I couldn't have said that any better.
Oh, thank you.
Honestly, no, to have such a depth and understanding of that, it does release us from so much that has hung over us as we travel on this journey without that information. But I know we came here to experience this death transition. We came here, and we knew, as you were saying, we planned this before we are born.
Yes.
I planned this with Scott. You planned this with Kyle, and we knew at that time, with the all-knowing of spirit, that these experiences would show us so much more. We would then experience, we can then teach, and we're always here to evolve. And we're here, each of us in our own way are evolving others, whether as a mother we are, and as a mother whose child has left, we are as well. And so when you start to really look at that bigger picture and live within that, and Scott has, we've taken the words, we're not human beings having spiritual experiences, because we thought, I just had a spiritual experience before all this happened to us, right?
Right,
so
right.
I know that sign was a spiritual experience. So we take ourselves from this quote, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having spiritual experiences in the human body. Let's expand even that. We really, truly are having these spiritual experiences in the human body. And so I practice, don't always get it right, but I practice seeing myself as spirit in a way that says I'm not separating myself from my humanness, because I still have a lot to experience, but knowing that that's where Scott is. He's spirit, I'm spirit with a body over me. We can connect on that spiritual level. That makes sense to me. And I never really understood that. We call it the veil, which now everyone knows is beginning to, blow through the window, that curtain-like thing's blowing through the window, the veil. But to be able to see ourselves as spirit, in the workshop that I did at Helping Parents Heal, I did it a second time that you weren't in, Caroline, and I asked everyone in the room to imagine that they were spirit and their child is spirit, and to just kind of get ourselves into that place of what do we have in common. If we're hearing them, we know that that communication, that line of communication is still open. It may not be an absolute conversation, but it can come through signs and butterflies and any kind of sign that you can imagine. A friend of mine today wrote she saw a manatee, and it's like, oh my gosh, that was a sign for her.
Yes.
We can't imagine at the time how those surprises are going to affect us and open us up to the bigger picture and then the bigger picture. So I see myself as spirit as often as I can.
Yes.
And spiritual experiences in my human body.
Yes. And also, I like to take that one step farther with the oneness, the understanding that there is no separation. In truth, the physical comes from spirit. Spirit is manifesting this physical that we feel, touch, and taste. But in truth, and this is old school science, in 7th grade science class, when I was studying molecules and atoms, I'll never forget my science, and this might be the only thing I remember from middle school. My science teacher said, nothing is truly solid. Science has already proven we do not live in a physical world. It appears you put anything under a high power microscope, what do you see? You see tiny particles moving. They're not stationary. Tiny particles moving that don't even touch one another. There's more space in between those particles than, in truth, you should be able to put your hand through anything because those particles don't even touch. So science has proven we're not living in a physical universe. It just appears physical to us. So in truth, it's spiritual. Everything is spiritual. All there is spirit. So when I think of it, I say, no, I know that on the other side of the veil, when they are physical, when they are in spirit and they let go of their physical body, but I know the physical that we are experiencing here is just manifested from spirit. And in truth, it's not physical. Right. You know, it just appears to be physical. And when you think of it that way, you understand the physical is just as spiritual as spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's no.
When you can go to that place, just extraordinary.
Yeah.
And to know, I mean, we need the body because that's the experience.
You're right.
That's the experience taker. It's the traveler on the path.
Right. Yes, it's our vehicle. It's like having a car. We can't get around very well without our car. So we need the body to get around in this quote unquote physical reality. Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's so fun to talk to you about this because I mean it just opens up more depth than ordinarily I can get with someone else that I'm trying to explain this to.
Yes.
So with all of this that I now live within, and yes, it's been a number of years, but a lot of this has just come more recently as it is being opened up because spirit is opening up the doors and the windows and letting more come and wanting us to see more. I don't know what the future will be, which will be so interesting to think where they're taking us with this. Right. But I also want to bring forth, and right now I don't even know what I'm going to say because I know it's going to come out. So I'm going to listen to is that when we are experiencing all of this life, this is spirit, when we are experiencing all of this life and we are struggling so deeply in our grief and the questions come and we can't remember any of the experiences that we planned, as you said, we are then being shown through our children, through others, through the support that we can find, through books that we read, that this journey has been going on forever. How many other generations have written about the spiritual experiences and how nature is so important to each of us in the ways that we maybe don't always plug into? And I find that so fascinating. Spirit's now giving me this, that this seems new to all of us because we're newer. This is the generation that we're in. We're in a body as Sarah and Caroline in this lifetime. But this has been going on a long, long time. And what Scott has showed me, and I wouldn't be surprised with you, Caroline, as well, is that I have been a medium in past lives. Okay. I have had these experiences of being able to hear spirit before. And now in this lifetime, I needed to come in, go through the entire experience of, my child dying, be rebirthed into spirit, and knowing that there's a depth to me that is coming out in ways that I didn't know. It seems familiar. Things resonate with me.
Yes.
It's because I've had past lives where I was doing spiritual work before. Many of us have. Not every single lifetime, because we need a lot of different experiences in past lives. But when you start to see someone that you recognize is really resonating with everything you take, I figure that person was probably in a past life with me, or they had many experiences, spiritual experiences like I had had before, and it opens this up to even more.
Right.
And now Scott had me do he's having me do past life regressions on the page. Robert Schwartz does past life regressions, through his therapy. Mine is through writing a page or page and a half, just to give someone an idea of who they've been in a past life. Mm-hmm. And how their child connected with them in that lifetime, because there's no doubt that we have been in past lives. I've been in thousands of past lives with Scott before.
Yes.
So comforts me.
Yes.
He needed to come into my lifetime this time. And as we planned for him to leave, for him to go back to spirit, for him to then push me into all of this.
Right.
And that is so fascinating to think of as well, and helpful.
Yes. Yes. I think like I said, I had 2 experiences with Kyle where he almost transitioned in 2011, and doctors actually had given up on him, asked me if they could take him off of life support in December of 2011. I refused, but I refused for them to take him off, but I knew my mind was like, I'm going before Kyle. I wrote in the suicide note I wrote, because I was in the hospital in a small waiting room where I took a bottle of over-the-counter sleeping pills. I wrote in the suicide note, my son, I am not going to bury my son. My son is going to bury me. So I believe, and I was unconscious for 2.5 days. I have no recollection, no near-death experience, memories. But I do believe that Kyle and I had made a plan that he was going and I was going to stay. And in 2011, I wasn't with the plan. So I believe that he's like, okay, she's not quite with the plan, so I'll stay a little bit longer till she gets with the plan, So I kind of, because he, like I said, doctors had given up on him, and I tried to kill myself. So now I am a patient in the hospital. They let me see him on I was on suicide watch. They allow me to visit with him for an hour or so a day. And I whisper in his ear, Kyle, get well. So we could both go home. And that night, he pulled himself off life support. So that was all spirit. That was just a true medical miracle. And I'm sure at some point, his soul said to my soul, okay, she's not quite ready. We need to give her a little bit more time so she can follow up on her end of the deal, of the plan. And I realized that when he actually did transition, because I say that I was at complete peace when he actually transitioned. I knew he wasn't gone. I knew it was our souls planned together. And I knew I was still here, because I had more work to do. And he had done his work, but he was going to still we were still going to work together. So he's still with me working. So, and I love when you say, I think of journey. This is how I think of journey personally. I think of journey as the same as the destination. We just don't realize that each moment, each now moment, yet we have lived many lives, past and future, because I don't use reincarnation anymore. I say simultaneous incarnations. We are living right here in this now moment, hundreds, if not thousands of incarnations, because all there is that now. I don't know if you've ever read The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle, another one of my favorite books. But understanding that, yes, it is a journey, but the journey and the destination are truly one. They're one and the same. And when you understand that, that's when you don't have to wait to be happy. Like, okay, I'm going to be happy when. Mm-hmm. No, the now, I'm not there, because the when never gets here. It's the now. Now is where you find the love. where you find the peace, where you find the joy. The only place to find it is here and now. Wow. So I understand that a lot from Eckhart Tolle's work with the power of now, and understanding all there is now. And yes, it is a journey, but that journey is also the destination. They're one and the same.
Sure. Yeah. And I love that too. And, you know, I think sometimes we have to understand that everybody's going to be kind of in a different place on this destination journey, and we have to allow them time. Some are going to take longer because they need more time in a certain area to get to go forward or to take those steps. And you know, as much as I would love for everyone to be able to understand what I'm understanding today, I have to know that some may not in this lifetime get to that place. It will come eventually. They plan for this lifetime to be one of, like we all did, challenge, love, and all that intermingled. But it is the challenges are what are going to teach us more than anything. The easy life, we also want it to be easy, and yet we have to almost look back on that and look at what we got out of that, the easier times versus those challenges that pushed us. And then we know, wait a minute, every challenge, every day has meaning that I didn't think of. And what I do now is I'm, like I said, I'm still challenged as well. I figure I'm going to be until I leave, because I'm not done, right?
Exactly.
But in knowing that, if something comes up that I'm really confused about, or even if I get a headache and I'm really down for several days, I will go, I know this has meaning. I'm not going with reason. I'm going, this has meaning. I don't know it yet. I don't know if I'll know it in a week or a year or 10 years, but I know this experience today has meaning because it's a part of my journey. It's a part of what I have to go through. And I'm always learning from each of those experiences, and new people come into my life because I need them for something that I couldn't have known would come into my life. And so I would encourage everyone who's going through all of this, that we are as well, is to use that word meaning and not get stuck on reason, because that one just doesn't sit well with anybody, as far as I can find in when you're talking about grief and death.
Yes.
But having meaning always is helping me. And there's a book that, Louise Hay does a lot of books, a lot of reading, writing with that. Mm-hmm. And often I can find meaning from a little book that she wrote called You Can Heal Your Body.
Yes.
And she will come up with let's say if I would break my toe, and it's like, oh my gosh, why did I break my toe? I stubbed my toe. This hurts so badly. But then I have to go to that place. It's like, wait a minute, this has meaning. It wouldn't have happened. It's going to make me hobble or go to the doctor, or, I'm going to be in pain for a little while. But she has affirmations that go with these in that book, You Can Heal Your Body. Yes. And I know for toe, it is all details in life take care of themselves. It's like, well, okay, I don't always see that happening. Right. But if I take that in and go, but it's not so much my toe right now, it's a message to Sarah that's saying, here's your words for the day. Here's your affirmation. Yes. All details in life take care of themselves. Why? How? Because it was soul planned. Yes. Because we've created it in spirit. We know we need this experience, and the details really are taking care of themselves. We can't always see the outcome. We can't always see the process. Yes. But spirit knows it.
Yes. And I love the two points you touched upon is everybody is actually perfect exactly where they are. Even if they're in a place where they cannot even get out of the bed, they are perfect. Everyone is a divine, perfect aspect of God. And it's hard. I noticed this in my travels, and it's hard for people to say, I'm perfect, because we're taught as human beings, you're imperfect. We are perfect. We are all perfect, divine aspects of God. That is who we are. And whatever you call yourself, you're calling God. So if you call yourself imperfect, you're calling God imperfect. You are perfect. Everyone listening to this, podcast, anyone in every 7 billion people or more, everyone is perfect. No matter where they are in their journey, they are perfect because they are all a reflection of God. And God is always perfect. He's never not perfect. And we are all that. I love Rumi's quote, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the ocean in a drop. We are each God in a drop. God in his entirety." So if we call ourselves imperfect, we're calling God imperfect. We are always perfect. So at number one, I wanted to touch on that. So wherever you are in your journey, you're perfect exactly where you're supposed to be. And the other, see, there was 2 points. Why did I forget the second point? The second point, I think it was, what was this? Because we touched upon the that everybody is perfect, but the other point was, it'll come back to me.
Yeah, it'll come back.
It'll come back. You were just talking about it, and it's like, but it's, yes.
And I think the dichotomy of this too with us as human beings,
yes,
you know, but it's really spirit. But we see ourselves mostly as human beings.
Yes.
When we start to say, wait, I'm spirit, I'm a human being, wait, I'm a spiritual being in a human body, we start to merge that part of imperfection and perfection to be able to see that. I mean, I don't go around saying I'm perfect very often.
I know that's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. It's just the way we're taught not to. I mean, if you're Christian, you can't. If you say I am God, that's blasphemy. But in truth, we are. That's who we are. We are God. Yes, yes.
I understand that. And I think that the more we get to that place of seeing ourselves centered in spirit, I say spirit God, but if we see ourselves centered in spirit, we begin to see that we came in and we think we have flaws and there's this wrong or that wrong. But that really is the part of us that we came in to see and to be able to accept or to be able to work with or love, right? All the parts of ourselves.
Yes.
But it's a process. It is a part of the process. It's a part of the journey. It's part of the destination. Right. And we knew when we planned this what we needed and what we were coming for. And of course, we've forgotten it. But we will remind, you and I, and others will remind those that we can, that this is the journey and the destination. And when we accept it and embrace it, it really is easier than fighting it.
Yes.
And yet we do have to fight at times to get to the place where we can understand and process.
Right.
It's a back and forth journey.
Yes.
But the soul planning is the piece that really helped me open up to all of that's got meaning.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that was it. That it does all have meaning. That's exactly too. When things happen to me now, that unexpected things, unpreferable, unexpected things, I always ask that question. I always say, I know it's happening for my highest good. Even though I don't understand it. That was the second point. That was the second point. Even though I don't understand it, but I know whatever happens is happening for my highest good, or it wouldn't be happening. So
and we will insist it's not true, but when you get to that place that you can, it's like, okay, you can relax into that in a way that just feels like relief.
Yes.
But what it is really a greater understanding and awareness.
Yes. And I find when I ask that question, when I look at it, instead of saying, oh my God, why does this always happen to me? Instead of going there, saying, okay, this is happening for my higher purpose. And when I do that, when I take a look at it, I see the purpose. Maybe not the full purpose of why it happened, but I start to see a little bit of the direction it's leading me in, and saying, okay, it's breadcrumbs. Okay, instead of going there, it wants me to go here. Spirit wants me to follow this breadcrumb. So when I don't push against what's happening, another Byron Katie with love what is. When I don't push against what is and just love it and say, and say to myself, I know there's a higher purpose in this. Not sure what it is at this moment, but it does actually start coming to me much quicker if I'm pushing against it, saying, oh, no, it shouldn't be happening. You know, when I do that, you don't see the reasoning and the way that spirit, you're pushing against where spirit is trying to lead you when you do that. So,
and that is the process, is pushing and coming back, and pushing and coming back, and then maybe going, wait a minute, it's beginning to make more sense. And there's so much now available, you know, with the podcasts like you're doing, and the Zoom has opened up the opportunity for so many more people to share. We can get so much more information. And I also want to make a point here that not everything that I believe may resonate with you or someone else, but we're all coming to that place of finding our own belief system. So even though I might say, but this is what I believe and this is what I know, or I want you to believe in this, I really don't do that, because I know that if it's resonating with me, it will with some others, but somebody may not be ready for it. And so you really have to discover your own belief system. And even when you find it, in a year, it can be, you know, changed and added to, and some things dropped off. And that is the beauty of this. You are evolving into a greater awareness and seeing more. And so we all have to find that, you know, what works for us for that period of time.
So true. I always tell people, I don't consider myself a teacher, a preacher, or anything. And I said, just what I inspire and I'd say inspire, because all I feel like I can do, the outer world, a book, a person, a place, a thing, the outer world can only point you to you, because it's all happening from within you. And so I always encourage people, inspire people to go within, find that quiet space, find that quiet place, listen to what's in your heart. Not necessarily what's in that monkey mind, but what's in your heart, what really brings you joy. Listen to that, and listen to what resonates. I love that. What resonates with you. And so, like the books like Robert Schwartz and Eckhart Tolle, all that their teaching resonated with me. I was sent to Catholic school when I was a kid, and the dogma of, and I have nothing against Catholicism. I have respect for all religion, all faiths, whatever you believe. If that resonates with you, then please follow it. But when I was a child going to Mass, some of the things that I was being taught didn't resonate with me. But as a child, I was brought up in the 60s, and my father was very strict and said, child is supposed to be seen and not heard, so I couldn't question it. You know, but as an adult, and I started to read things for myself, like, yeah, that, like my 7th grade science teacher, when he said nothing is truly solid, that resonated with me. So what resonates with me may not resonate with anybody else, but it's okay, because and I respect if someone has a viewpoint that totally doesn't resonate with me. I respect them still as being a divine aspect of God with a different viewpoint, and all viewpoints are equal. None are better or worse. That's how that's where we all have different viewpoints, which is unique, and that's the way it's supposed to be. But when you start judging another person's viewpoint as being less than yours, that's when you get it. God is non-judgmental, which we are all God, but God has no judgment, because he knows he would only be judging an aspect of himself. So we're all equal. Non-judgment, unconditional love, non-judgment. That is truly the essence of what we call God, which is which is everything. All that is.
You're a teacher. I'm telling you.
You know what? We're all teachers and students. We all are.
I love that. I love that. And also, when it comes to judgment, for me on the soul plan, I know if someone's not agreeing with me or they want to argue with me, I understand that, because I'm not going to judge that, because I know that's their soul plan right now. That's where they have to be. And wherever they're going to end up, I don't know. I can only give them what I can give them.
Yes.
And so the judgment kind of falls away from me in a way. It's like, well, that's where they are.
Yes.
It's not, I'm not going to say they're wrong because I don't know what they need.
Exactly.
Yeah. I can only teach what I can teach. So.
Yes. And in truth, when you, again, because I try for me to ground myself in the oneness and understanding oneness and the yin and yang symbol, the dark and the white, the black and the white are equal. And in truth, there is no right and wrong. And I know that's very hard to hear from a human perspective, but in truth, there is no right and wrong because it's all God. And there is, that's where you take away the judgment. We encourage, you and I both encourage people to live their truth, speak your truth, live your truth. And if somebody else's truth doesn't resonate with you, it's okay. You still can love them and respect them as being another divine aspect of God, another divine aspect of yourself in truth, because they're not separate from you. So you respect them. You don't have to agree. You could totally have different things that resonate totally differently, but understand you can still respect and love without agreeing. You know?
For example, I'm one of 4 children.
Yes.
My older brother, when I first told him about the kite poem, the sign I had from Scott, it was like, I don't know. So then at our Angel of Hope Children's Memorial, we have a candle lighting every Christmas time, every December. And this one picture that my husband took has orbs all over it. You can see faces in the orbs. You can see angel wings. I mean, like everything could have been there that night was there. Yes. And I showed this to my brother, and he's like, nah, I think there was water on the lens. And so, even at 24 years later, I love my brother. Yes. And I finally, it's like I wasn't going to convince him, and I didn't want to be hurt by him. Right. I just had to allow him to have his belief. Yes. He wasn't going there in this lifetime. He's 76 years old now. He is not going there. Yes. And so family members often come in and create so much chaos and pain for us because we want them to know what we're going through. And my friend agrees with me and this person does, but the family's going, sometimes we have to kind of work through that and not let that take us to a level of such despair and just choose what feels right. And I feel that whenever something really resonates with me, my spirit is going, yes, take this in. Yes. That's what you need today.
Yes.
So that's my spirit within.
Well, I have a cousin, and I know that this cousin, I know this cousin is in my life to really ground in unconditional non-judgment and love in my life, because this particular cousin is just so closed-minded. I mean, so closed-minded to anything that's not mainstream, exactly what society has been spoon-feeding you from day one. That if it's not what society has said, he says things so contradictory to himself. He's like, do you hear what you're saying? It's like, but I was just like, I love you, So yes, and I said, okay, I understand. So I think Spirit is trying to train me to be a teacher, and using my cousin as like, okay, as a tool to like, okay, if you could deal with him, you could deal with you.
But that's true because, we do have to learn to find balance in all of this. And it's like, this is my passion. This is what I love. It's all surrounding Scott and me. And yet other people can't go there. And so my balance came eventually when it's like, I can't convince you, but I know what I know. I know others believe in me and trust what I know as well. Yes. And you people, I love you, but we're not going there this time, together. Right. And there's no judgment. It's like, okay, you guys are where you're at, and it's, I love you, and there's no judgment around it. And I had, because when I first woke up to the truth of oneness, to me, it's like, I get it. And it was science. It was a science documentary, What the Bleep. And I'm like, I get it. All there is God. It's just that simple. There is nothing outside of God. And every part of God is connected. So what you do to another person, you're literally doing to the all.
all of God. And I get it. And when I first got that, I woke up to the truth of oneness. This was in 07. This is in 07. I wanted to share it with everybody I knew. And they started looking at me like I had two heads. And I was like, and I eventually had to get to the place where, okay, they don't get it. It's like, and that
was a fine experience for you. Do you understand?
Yes. I was like, okay, they don't get it. And it's not for me to make them get it. It's for me to share to the world, but not everybody's gonna resonate with what I'm sharing, and that is perfectly okay. No judgment, non-judgment, just love. It's all God, because all there is God, and all God is unconditional love.
Yeah.
So true. So true. Yes, and I get a high. I tell people I don't have to do drugs. I get a high weekly when I do my show, because I meet people like you that understand and resonate, and we have these wonderful conversations. And I get a high from it. I really do. I'm like floating on cloud nine.
The same way. High five.
Yes. Yes. So this is so amazing. So now please share with our listeners more upcoming events and how they can find you, how they can follow your work and get a copy of the book. Now I know I have it. It's on I got it at the conference. But you just show the book cover again. And sorry, that is my cell phone usually. I don't.
And we have to explain the title with death. Now, I know that we're all transitioning out of that word because it seems too final. On the other hand, because I've asked Scott Spirit many times, why do you keep giving me this word death? Because death is really a word that's worldwide still.
Yes.
Those of us that are more aware, we're using new terminology, and I'm using that terminology too. So with death, you could put quotation marks around the death right there, but it is the proof of, what is it? The Book of Mom's blogs, Death Teaches, but this is proof that love is forever, that death did not separate Scott and I.
Yes.
And so this is on my website, which is spiritteaches.org, and I have to get used to the org part, spiritteaches.org, and you can order it there. Honestly, I'm not sure how much I've made it. I think it's $16 with shipping and handling and all that. But it's got 65 of our blogs in here that Scott, so much of it is Scott's words.
Yes.
There's Scott, his life all wrapped up in a blog. I mean,
in a collage. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
So, and also on that website is the opportunity for past life regressions, which are $50, which I need 2 weeks usually to get those because I usually am kind of backed up. Death Teaches is on there. And also, where am I going to be this summer? I'm going to St. Louis for the Compassionate Friends the last week of July.
Okay.
And I'm going to do a workshop there. And then the following week is Bereaved Parents of the USA, which is in Memphis, and do 3 workshops there. So, a lot of those workshops mine are always going to be spiritual because that's the only thing that I'm bringing forth now. Right. But I can relate to just about anyone in any circumstance. So, so thank you for asking that. And then I will be at the AREI in Phoenix, and not presenting, but as an attendee and learning and growing.
Well, I'm actually I was asked to be a moderator for the AR, and that is the Afterlife
Research and Education Institute.
Thank you. Yes, because I was one of my guests, Suzanne Wilson, asked me to moderate there, so I am so looking forward.
I can't wait. I'll be there.
Yes, beautiful. Thank you so much. And again, share your website. It's spiritteaches.org. So please, I want anyone to follow you, to check you out on your website. And this, like I said, we definitely are kindred and our sons. And I always know when I'm with a parent that has a child on the other side, I know our children, right now, Scott and Kyle are together.
No doubt.
No, yes, no doubt. And
they brought us together.
Yes. And I know that they're both very proud. Yes.
Oh,
yes.
I know that too. I know
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank
I really
you.
can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank you. And I'm looking forward to seeing you again in September. There's
Yeah.
a song, I'll see you
September.
in September. And I can't sing. I tried to sing, especially with a dry throat.
Yeah.
Oh, and I always say I don't get sick, but I did go camping Memorial Day weekend, and it rained all day Sunday. So I think I got a little bit of a cold in my throat, but it's clearing up. But
And your message came through, so that didn't stop anything.
yes, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. And we'll be seeing each other soon, and we'll keep in touch.
Okay.
Love
Thank you. Love you.
Love you so much.